Welcome to The Score with Brett Wiseman here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and all our fine Tobacco Road Sports Radio streaming platforms. We've gone from Panther patience to Panther panic to serious Panther problems. Now we're at just Panther pain. The Panthers remain the only winless team in the NFL. No one has any idea what's going on. No one has any idea exactly how to fix it. So the three of us, me, Brett Wiseman, the host of this fine program, Wil Higdon, and Josh Scott, the two finest and smartest Panthers fans I know that are not named Desmond Johnson, are here to try and make sense of where on God's green earth things could go from here. Because they can't get much worse, right? Josh, we had Will on last week, and we kind of equated the Panthers right now, at least tuning into them, as having a dental procedure done. Just watching the coordinator press conferences week after week is like having a root canal. Like, it's literally painful to sit there and listen to Frank Reich forget that Terrence Marshall's on the field or run a play for Adam Thielen when he's not on the field at the time that you called the play. It took him 6 weeks to figure out, oh, wait, I'm really bad at this play calling thing. Maybe I should defer this responsibility to someone else. Yeah, no bleep, Frank. It took it that long to occur to you that you're a terrible play caller. Everywhere else you've ever been, you never called the plays. Why is Carolina any different? Oh, because I was the quarterback there, and I stop it. Stop. See his hand moving this way on your screen if you're watching on YouTube. This, Frank, means defer the responsibility. You don't know your rear end from a hole in the ground, Frank. Until you figure it out, stop calling plays. Thankfully, he's done that. So that's step one of about 270 to get to where the Panthers need to go. Josh, we'll start with you. What have you seen in these 6 weeks? Granted, there's a lot of glaring issues, flaws, etc. What have you seen specifically that you can point to that would be fixable, I guess?
Brett, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a tough question to answer because there are so many things that are going on with this Panthers team right now that in some cases aren't fixable. The growing pains of a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young, the growing pains of a new head coach and a new coaching staff in Frank Reich. Thankfully, and he had planned to do this before the beginning of the season, or he had mentioned he was going to do this to hand the play calling responsibilities to Thomas Brown. He was going to do it eventually, so we knew he had that plan in mind. So thankfully, it'll be interesting to see how Brown handles the offensive play calling. But again, the rookie quarterback, new head coach, new head coaching staff, and then the injuries too. The injuries have been horrendously bad for this team. You start with Brady Christensen and Shaq Thompson towards the beginning of the season getting injured and not playing for the rest of the season. J.C. Horn is out. Dante Jackson and Miles Sanders have both been kind of, on and off the field in some weeks. Von Bell has been out. Xavier Woods has been out. Chandler Zavala had that scary neck injury against the Lions a couple weeks back. I mean, just all kinds of injuries have been taking place on this team. And unfortunately, injuries are a part of football. But this many injuries, especially 6 weeks into a season, personally, I've never seen it with any team in the NFL, much less my Carolina Panthers before. So, it's hard to pinpoint a specific issue that's fixable when so many issues with this team right now are unfixable.
Right. And injuries aren't necessarily an excuse. They're more of a reason. And now when you throw Jeremy Chin into this. I think 6 weeks was the minimum he's going to be on the shelf. Now, when you rope him into all of this, Will, it derails a whole lot of plans that this team had.
Yeah, I think the key word here is depth. The Panthers just don't have good depth, and you can see that pretty much across the roster. Like, why is it that for the Panthers, if 2 or 3 guys go down and the bottom just falls out, like they have no quality depth on the roster? The Houston Texans, they're missing 4 of their 5 starters in the offensive line, and they just gave up their first sack of the season this past Sunday. It just kind of goes to show you, like, this team just doesn't have good depth, and it's going to take probably another offseason to address that because I don't see any short-term fix, at least at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, you're now about a week and a half out from the trade deadline, and your main focus this whole time has been trying to get a number 1 receiver.
It seems they flipped on that, though. The recent reports,
I would hope.
Yeah, it says they're looking to be sellers at the deadline, but like what's worth even trading away? Like maybe Terrace Marshall Jr., but you maybe get like a 5th-round pick, maybe at that. Like, I don't see much to trade away. I mean, you could trade Brian Burns, but you're definitely not going to get 2 first-round picks at this rate. I don't know.
No,
There's just there's nothing much you can do right now, and just kind of have to wait until the offseason to address these problems.
That's got to be the spot to pivot to, though, right? It is seller, because a couple weeks ago we had the conversation of, okay, if you're going to go after a number 1 wide receiver, what in the heck are you going to give up for him? You literally have no draft picks. So the advent to this would be, we literally have no draft picks. We need draft picks. So sell off a Terrace Marshall Jr. or a Brian Burns, or, a couple of more maybe expendable pieces out of some other position groups. That would be the logical thing to do. But yet 2 weeks ago, you had Scott Fitterer picking up the phone, calling my Green Bay Packers and asking about Christian Watson, to which Brian Gutekunst responded, and I quote, "No chance in hell," and hung up the phone. This is how far the pivot has gone in 2 weeks. We've gone from, we want Christian Watson, to we're trading 6 guys. That's how far the anvil has dropped in 14 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeremy Chin would have been another guy that would have potentially been a trade target, but now he's injured, so you can't even trade him at this point. He's in the last year of his contract, so you can't really get anything for him at this point either.
I think one thing that, obviously needs to happen, and it can fix a good bit of things. You've got to win a game. You have to win a football game to get some momentum going, whether it's working on the amount of play calling and the type of play calling, whether it's on offense or defense, whether it's just in getting the players' confidence up too. Win a game. That I've realized cheering for a team that hasn't won a lot of games over the last few seasons, that means a lot. Not just to the fan base, but to the players as well. If you win a game, especially for a team like the Panthers that just had a miserable start to the 2023-2024 season, just winning a game makes such a difference. And these next 3 weeks after the bye week, gentlemen, these next 3 games are winnable games. The Texans have been playing well, but they're still a young team. The Colts just lost their starting quarterback for the rest of the season. The Bears, nobody really knows what the Bears are or who they are, other than the fact they have an extremely talented number 1 wide receiver who had over 300 receiving yards against the Commanders a couple weeks ago and a couple of touchdowns. So those 3 games are winnable. Will the Panthers, will they win those 3 games? I don't think so. Probably not. But can they win them? Yeah. At least one. Give me one of those games. And the confidence will sweep through the locker room. It'll sweep through the front office. Winning a game does so much. And the Panthers have 3 chances in the next 3 weeks to do that.
Yeah, those 3 games after the bye, those are definitely the most winnable games, I think, probably on the schedule. The Colts, they won't have Anthony Richardson. The Bears might not have Justin Fields for that game because he's dealing with a thumb injury. So you should be able to win at least 2 of those games. if you can't win at least one or two of those games, that's bad, like real
And for the
bad.
Panthers,
Look,
speaking of getting
if
healthy,
you can't win one of those two games, you may not deserve to win a game, period.
for the Panthers, I just want to add this real quickly. Speaking of health, one positive health related, Austin Corbett will be back in one of those 3 games. Huge praise, right? Starting right guard. He needs to be back on that offensive line. He needs to be back on that field. So thank God the Panthers will catch a break with Big Corbs, as they call him, back on the field in the next
Yeah,
If for no other reason, just to stabilize that offensive line and give it some veteran stability in front of a rookie quarterback who, by no fault of his own, is kind of just flying by the seat of his pants at this point.
Yeah, that will definitely help shore up that right side of the offensive line. And also with the bye week, this gives a lot of the other players on the team a chance to rest and get healthier when they come back against the Texans. But I do want to maybe shift gears and talk about one positive, and that is Bryce Young. I think he's gotten better and better with each passing week.
Yeah, I agree.
He came out against Miami and was wheeling and dealing.
Yes.
Some of the throws that he made.
Let me stop you there and ask you something, because I'm sure there were a lot of Panthers fans that may not have even really acknowledged the fact that you went up 14-0 on the Miami Dolphins. But just that instance of time alone to say that you got off to that fast of a start against that good of a team, regardless of what the outcome ended up being, that alone has to be something that you take from and build confidence upon going forward.
Huge encouragement, no question about it. Huge encouragement. I don't care we lost 42-21. You go up 14-0 against the league's #1 scoring offense, the quarterback that leads the league in passing yards right now. One of their receivers leads the league in receiving yards right now and is on pace to go at least over 2,000 receiving yards by the end of the season. That's an encouragement to me. I don't care who you are. You go up 14-0 against the Miami Dolphins, this season's Miami Dolphins. That's a big deal. We weren't going to win that game, but you take small victories like that and then we'll value the bigger victories when they come down the stretch. But yeah, I don't care who you are. I'm encouraged the Panthers went up 14-0. Will, even though they didn't hold the lead, they went up 14-0 against the the league's #1 scoring offense.
Yeah, hey, no matter what they say, we'll always have that first quarter. But even in all seriousness, I just want to say that first quarter was probably the best the offense has looked all year, from drive to drive. And
no question.
I will say, outside of a couple of drives in that Seattle, there were a couple of drives in that Seattle game where the offense looked really, really good. But I think the best sustained period of time that this offense looked good was the first quarter of that Miami game this past week.
Yeah, and some of the throws that Bryce was making, they were just great throws. Like he was standing in there. That one throw he made to Thielen for 27 yards. He stands tall, throws the ball, gets popped, and delivers it to Thielen, who gets a lot of yak. Those were incredible throws. Then the one he threw in the end zone over the defender's hands, that was a beautiful throw. Of course, there were a few throws that he missed in that game, like the one deep ball to DJ Chark. But he played really well in that game. And you can just see the constant progression that he's getting better and better with each week. And now with
he
Thomas
didn't turn
Brown,
the ball over as well. Sorry.
Yeah, that was another big positive. And now with Thomas Brown calling the plays, I'm really curious to see what it'll look like with him calling the plays. Maybe he'll look even better.
And he didn't turn the ball over.
And I'm also curious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm also curious to see if the play calling switch, I think it should, gives Terrence Marshall Jr., Laviska Shenault some more opportunities, whether it be in the passing game or as coaches put it, an extension of the run game, whether it be in the screen game or jet sweeps, things like that. I want to see both those guys get more involved.
Yeah, well,
they talked about it during the offseason, them getting Laviska Shenault more involved, that he had become the Panthers' version of Deebo Samuel. He's barely been on the field. He's barely gotten any touches. Unfortunately, with his ankle injury against Miami that happened last Sunday, that complicates things a little bit. He might be out for a couple of weeks. Surprise, surprise, another injury for this team. But Yeah, I'm interested, like you said, Brett, to see if those guys get more reps because there's some talented players on this offense that haven't gotten a lot of playing time, like Terrace Marshall. I'm very surprised that he hasn't been on the field more often. I mean, this guy had a big impact in helping Joe Burrow and the 2020 LSU Tigers win the national championship that year. He had a ton of touchdown catches in that season and a ton of receiving yards. The dude is a baller. Why is he not on the field more? That's what I want to know. So
I think me personally, I think I'm kind of a bit pretty low on TMJ at this point. I mean, he had a bad drop in that. I think it was the Miami game where Bryce throws the ball, it hits him in his hands, and he just doesn't catch it. Then there was that throw in the Minnesota game, and hits him in the hands. He drops it. It was recorded as a fumble, but he got it back luckily. So I don't know. I think even with this thin receiving core, I think I'm more hopeful with Mingo at this point than TMJ. But I do want to see Raheem Blackshear get more carries
yes,
now that Miles Sanders is injured. Blackshear and Hubbard are the two best running backs on this team. I don't care how much you paid Miles Sanders. I don't care how long he's going to be here. Like, those two are the best running backs on the team. And get Tariq Cohen from the practice squad involved. Give him a chance, too, now that we need some more running backs, because I don't know how long Chenault and Sanders are going to be out for.
And look, Tariq Cohen, look, as a Packers fan, I know the kind of impact that he can make, whether it be in the screen game or he is an electrifying, or has the potential to return to be an electrifying guy in the kick and punt return game, which is kind of a lost art in today's NFL. I think that's certainly an avenue that the Panthers need to explore now that roster.
yeah, it is. And but again, gentlemen, I mentioned at the very beginning, this team's got to get healthy, whether it's on offense, especially on defense. Got to get some players back on the field. I know some of them won't be able to return for the rest of the season, and they might as well, not. I mean, it's not like, things are going to turn around drastically, I imagine, after the bye week. But, I mean, this team's got to get healthy, and they've got to get healthy with the players that can return, and, they've got to be careful.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to see improvement. I just want to see continued improvement from Bryce Young at this point. I think as Panthers fans, that's really all we can ask for at this point. Just let the team stay healthy, let them develop, and keep growing with each passing week.
Yeah, I think that's the most important and the most logical thing that you can ask for as a fan base right now, Josh, is just take all the positives you can. Bryce Young, have him develop the rest of the way here, have him find some success, win you a handful of games, but, don't put yourself in a position to where you're not set up for success in 2024.
Bryce, again, like Will mentioned, he's been improving every single week. Statistically, I mean, he's having a better rookie season than Trevor Lawrence did, in my opinion, for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh,
And
yeah.
a couple of other quarterbacks,
Yeah.
who also had terrible rookie seasons. So Bryce is making do with what he's got, and it's not a lot, but he's making it happen, and he's gonna prove, and in some cases is already proving why the Panthers gave so much away and decided to trade all the way up to number 1 to go get him in the draft last April. He's proving that, and it's going to be interesting to see how he continues to progress through the rest of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to say I'm a firm believer in Bryce. I never switched up. Like I know the only reason some people are like so down on him is because the way CJ Stroud is playing. Which, I mean, he threw his first interception this past Sunday. Like, if Stroud was playing the way, if he wasn't playing that well, no one would really care. But I'm a firm believer that both Stroud and Bryce Young will turn out to be very good quarterbacks in this league. It sucks that we won't get to see more of AR this year, though. I was really hoping he could ball out some more.
Yeah, you're right. I was kind of hoping for that too. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on and enduring the pain that the Panthers bring you each and every week. We do appreciate the insight. All right, Steve Wiseman coming up on the other side of this timeout. He's going to talk some more college football. We're back on the score with Brett Wiseman here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and all Tobacco Road Sports Radio streaming platforms. Joining the program as he does every week is America's smartest Associated Press football top 25 voter and Duke football, basketball, all sports stuff beat writer, also my uncle, Steve Wiseman, who will be in the press box Saturday night for – well, there were two games prior to this that we thought were going to be the biggest games that Duke had ever had football-wise. But you'll be in Tallahassee Saturday night for what's going to be quite an environment. Network, nationally televised game against the perennial playoff favorite out of the ACC. The first question, how or what is the status of Riley Leonard, and or how is he progressing? Is it going to be a game time decision? What's the coaching staff going through as far as contingencies and protocols on that front?
I would think we won't know until Saturday if he's going to be the starter. They'll make a decision Thursday whether or not, okay, is this a possibility really? Can we really have a serious talk about this or not? Because he's been out, on the field, throwing the ball at practice, that kind of stuff. Henry Beelan is fully prepared to start again. They're preparing him as if he's going to start, like they did last week. Now, last week I knew there was no chance Riley was going to play. This week is different. We're going on 3 weeks now. So we'll see, how he can move. That's the main thing they're worried about is, can he protect himself out there? Because when you have an ankle and you're a quarterback that, like Riley, is usually kind of slippery, right? There's a lot of things about getting away from guys. If he can't protect himself and can get hurt worse, that's what you don't want, because they have Louisville next week. They have Carolina on November 11th. As you just said, you keep thinking this is the biggest game Dukes have played ever or whatever. And the Carolina game is going to be the biggest one. Probably you can solve a lot of problems if you win that game, right? So even if they lose Saturday night without Riley Leonard. So if that answers what I'm saying, like they're kind of uncertain, but he is progressing well, and he's close. I would say, if not this Saturday, for sure against Louisville, he should probably play.
Yeah, when you look at this next 4 weeks for Duke, this is probably the biggest 4-week stretch for this football program ever, maybe. Mm-hmm. That's maybe stretching a bit, but at least in my lifetime, it's the biggest 4-week stretch they've had. 4th-ranked Florida State, 21st-ranked Louisville. Right after Louisville, you got a short week against Wake Forest. Yes, that's a home game. That's a good thing. But then you got Carolina 9 days after that across town. So you got 3 games against the other top 3 teams in the ACC, and then a potential trap game on a short week against an in-state rival that who knows where Wake Forest could be in 3 weeks' time from where they're at right now. We'll unpack that in a second. But this next 4 weeks is high drama, Tums tossing time for the Duke Blue Devils.
It is, and 3 of them on the road, right? We just 3 of those games are on the road.
The only home game in that stretch is against Wake on a short week.
On a Thursday night when, so, and that game looked tougher in August than it does now. But anyway, it's still a short week, and believe me, Elko doesn't like the short week at all. This will be the second one they've had, because they had Clemson on a Monday followed by a game on the following Saturday. So anyway,
right.
But they have to, if they want to go to the ACC title game, which is their goal and where they think they should be, they're going to have to win at least 2 of these road games, at least 2, to get first or second place. Because if you lose to Florida State, but you beat Carolina, you can make up for it. But you better beat Louisville in the meantime. So you certainly didn't want to be going into this with, your starting quarterback banged up. But that's the way the game's played sometimes. But they know what they're up against. They know what they're facing. They've been a pretty good road team. They've usually played better on the road than at home in their history in the last 10 years or so. But Elko has proven to be able to get a team ready for just about any circumstance. And it's, we're a year and a half into this, and I haven't seen any major flub ups. So I don't foresee that happening where they'll just not be ready for what they're facing Saturday night.
How do you get a team ready? To me, I'm akinning this to about 17 years ago, which makes me feel old. When Wake Forest was undefeated, granted this Duke team's not undefeated, but Bobby Bowden coached that Florida State team. No, they weren't the 4th-ranked team in the country, but Wake Forest historically never went into Florida State and did anything but get their rear ends handed to them, get taken to the outhouse behind the woodshed, any Southern cliche you want to throw in there. Except in 2006, the year they won the ACC championship, they went into Tallahassee and were the first team ever to shut out Bobby Bowden at home, 30-0. So how do you get a team that's historically not just an underdog this year, like historically from a pure football program perspective, an underdog, not a Florida State? How do you prepare a team and a program to go on a stage like this and try and make what would be a shockwave-inducing statement?
They have they've done it from the very beginning when the staff came in last year and kind of turned around the attitude and the work they've done in the offseason, the strength. I mean, they are, and it's taken me getting used to it. They're able to go out and push around just about anybody they play. I'm talking anybody. They're not physically intimidated anymore by these teams. Now, I'm not saying Florida State has NFL players, right? They have all over the field.
And again, so did Notre Dame.
And so did Clemson.
And so did Clemson.
Usually. So that's what I mean. I keep waiting for them to get pushed around by somebody. It's not happening. So I start to believe what I see. And that has brought the mentality of these guys to where, we're a couple of 2 or 3 years ago or whatever, Dwayne Carter, the defensive preseason All-ACC defensive lineman, talked to him Tuesday. His first game at Duke was against Alabama in Atlanta, opened the season in 2019, one of the kickoff classic games. And Duke went out there and got, they got beat 42-6 or whatever. And he said, "Oh, this is what college football is like," right? Now he knows, and now they're ready for that. They're a different. They weren't ready for that back then, and now they are. They all are confident that they can tackle these guys. They can, they can play with them.
Right, and that's I think as a program, the Wake Forest had to go through the same thing. To where it took Jim Grobe about 6 years to get that program to the point where they went from losing every time Appalachian State came in as an FCS program with Daniel Jeremiah as their quarterback. Duke had a point in time about the time that Wake Forest started ascending where they would lose to an FCS school pretty much every year, that Furman or Richmond or William and Mary would come in and just 21-13 them to death.
They quit playing Richmond. They said, "We're not playing them anymore. We keep losing to them."
I can see why they won't play them or Furman, because I remember every time I would look at the ticker on ESPN and I'd see Duke pop up. And, Richmond beat them again. Is that basketball? Yeah. No. It'd be much more surprising if you saw that happen in basketball. But Duke has had to go through the same process that those Wake Forest teams did, where I guess you could put it to, okay, historically basketball school, no one considers your football program to be any sort of serious, yada, yada, so on and so forth. They've had to come into their own and prove that we can hang with you. We can run toe-to-toe with you. We can tackle you. We can push you around just like you can try and push us around. We are on the same plane as you.
And like last Saturday's game was a great example when they played NC State, who they get better quality recruits than Duke does as a whole, right? And all that. And they when they without their starting quarterback and just shut them down. I mean, NC State didn't have a chance to move the ball and win that game. And just 2 years ago or 3 years ago during the pandemic, Duke went over and played NC State in Raleigh. And it was a lot of trash talking and NC State kind of pushed them around and won that game. So just that's a stark difference right there. Duke was the one dictating play, Saturday night against a rival that usually pushes them around. So they've kind of turned that corner mentally to where they're the aggressive team. They think they're the better team.
And Duke got a lot of help from Pitt the other night when they, shockingly to all of us, were able to go out and beat Louisville. The bad news for Wake Forest is they have to play that Pitt team a week after they go to Virginia Tech and go through the motions, so to speak. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be. I was confused at points watching that game last Saturday in Blacksburg, watching on ACC Network, but yes, watching the game, it was in Blacksburg. Mitch Griffiths goes down, and you think he's done for the game. You don't really see him on the sideline a whole lot. And then the backup goes down, and magically Mitch Griffiths is up in pads, warming up to come back in. It's almost like it was used as an excuse to see what they had in the other guy. The problem is Wake Forest offensive line is playing more like traffic cones, whereas everyone is running around them instead of into them.
They're not, yeah, they're struggling bad. And, their opening game against Elon, obviously they won handily, but some people that were at that game, other writers I talked to, Connor O'Neill, who's done covered Wake for a long time, said we saw things that night that were concerning, but you thought, okay, it's the first game. And that was against Elon, right? And it hasn't really gotten better in that. We talk about offensive line play. Mitch isn't, is a long way from Sam Hartman. And you hope that he'd been in the program long enough he can step in. And this is a year that Wake's kind of, the programs like Duke and Wake, they can have really strong seasons for long stretch seasons, and then they're going to have a step back every once in a while. That's just how it goes because they're not recruiting 4- and 5-star kids. So this is a step back year for Wake. They don't want to drop too far. They want to see what their floor is. That's kind of what this is about. And State's going through a little bit of the same thing over in Raleigh, but we're talking about Wake right now, and they need to, to toughen up. I mean, losing the home loss to Georgia Tech was kind of the sign of something's wrong here. And I thought Pitt would be a team they could go out and maybe get a win against. And now, after what Pitt did last week, I'm not so sure. So it's going to be a tough game.
Even though it's homecoming, it's not a sure thing for Wake in that regard. And it's not a sure thing that the Dave Clawson bowl game streak is going to continue either. Because you look past this weekend, you have Florida State next weekend, Duke on the road, also a short week for Wake Forest.
Sure.
And then you got Notre Dame on November the 18th. NC State and Syracuse are sandwiched around the Notre Dame game. But the Notre Dame game's in South Bend. So the chances of you getting to 6 wins is slimming to the point where this Pitt game almost becomes a must win if you want to play in a bowl game.
That's right. They got to beat Pitt, State, and Syracuse because I don't see them beating Notre Dame, Florida State. Who am I missing?
Duke.
There's one. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think Duke's going to be the better. Duke is the better team right now. I think it's clear that and Duke's defensive line, the way they play defense, they're going to get after Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Even on a short week. So, they need this one bad. They need to beat Pitt bad.
I have to ask you, if by some miracle Duke were to pull off the win on Saturday night in Tallahassee, we're still about, I think we've got another week before the first CFP rankings. If Duke is able to pull it off Saturday night, does one loss exclude Florida State? And then are we looking at who has the better schedule among Florida State, Duke, or Carolina? Where does the committee for the CFP, does the committee shift on Florida State based on a result Saturday night?
Yes, because it's a home game. And it's not, I think they'll have respect for Duke because, again, Duke beat Clemson. They played Notre Dame to the wire, right? And then if they had a win at Florida State, that's going to, okay. Now you have to consider Florida State beat LSU. That's a big win for them. They beat Clemson on the road. Clemson's not what they usually are, but still, I mean, I think Carolina is going to be ahead of both of them. They'll be undefeated at that point when that comes out because they got Virginia, so they got to bye. And then they have Georgia Tech the week after that, which they've had trouble with, but they should win both those games if they're the team we think they are. So in that scenario, Carolina is going to be the top-ranked ACC team at that point. They'll be, I don't know if they get up the top 4 or not, but yeah, that's kind of where we'd be heading.
Are you telling me that North Carolina fans should root for Duke on Saturday? Should root for Duke, period, is a blasphemous statement. But would it not benefit North Carolina for Duke to win this game?
It would when it comes to that. Now, the thing is, Carolina will eventually, if things play out, get their shot at Florida State in Charlotte in the ACC title game. And then if you're both undefeated going into that game, one of you is going to go to the playoff. Whoever wins that game is going to go to the playoff. If Florida State loses, then if you beat them in the title game, it's not as prestigious a win, right? It might not take that way a little bit. So I can see where you're going there with rooting for Duke. As we used to say about baseball, it's a little too early to be rooting for the Cubs, right? So when the Cardinals used to be in playoff races, you shouldn't be rooting for the Cubs to beat
a long time ago
the Mets in June, right? So yeah, so that's kind of where that was. So it's a little too early for Carolina to be rooting for Duke. So we'll see how that goes down the road. But I see where you're going there, though.
I guess Halloween is kind of the flag day of college football. You know who you have by Halloween, just like Major League Baseball. You know what kind of team you got by Flag Day, and the 4 of us, me, you, and your 2 brothers, one of which is my father, standing in an elevator in St. Louis in June going, we suck.
It was a white flag day.
Yes, it was White Flag Day.
Yes.
As an AP voter, I have to get your thoughts on the scope of the nation as a whole, and I'll get to the big marquee games here in a second. But there's a proposition put forth that I have to bring up because it's incredibly interesting, and I didn't know any of these possibilities existed. So Reddit CFB on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, put forth this based on some NCAA bylaws. There are 11 undefeated FBS teams currently.
Okay.
2 of them are not eligible for the postseason due to the FCS to FBS transfer rules. James Madison and Jacksonville State, or James Madison is one of those 11 teams that is undefeated. They're the only one that's not eligible. Jacksonville State, they're not undefeated, but this is their first year in FBS, and they've already won 6 games, neither of which can play in a bowl game. But allow me to present the artist known as the NCAA Can't Say No Bowl. Hear me out. Sunday, December 10th, the day after Army-Navy, according to NCAA bylaw 1711-5. Permissible regular season day allowed by the NCAA. You do not ever schedule a game on this day. Now, the next question is, where do you play it? Is Jacksonville State the home team? Do we play it at James Madison? Oh, contraire. We play it in Hawaii. Here's why. Any FBS team playing a game outside of the continental United States is allowed an extra regular season game without a waiver. NCAA bylaw 1711-6-2-1G. Both teams have 6 wins. They're among the first team to hit that mark. Play in the postseason because of antiquated transfer rules, which make 0 sense. The NCAA literally cannot stop this game from happening. So
I say go for it. I say you get a TV audience. Call it a bowl game. Call it some kind of bowl game.
Exactly. And would it officially be a bowl game?
2 million viewers.
No. I guarantee you there's some NFL games on December 10th that people would watch James Madison, Jacksonville State go at it. I guarantee you that game will get more viewers than your local 1 o'clock NFL game window.
And
I put money on it right
so
now.
you can do different things with the time and all that, So
Exactly. You can
that
put
could
it
be
at
helpful.
6 o'clock. You can put it in between Sunday Night Football and the 4:30 game. So you can watch the first half of the 4:30 game, watch James Madison, Jacksonville State at 6, and then boom, you're back to NBC by halftime.
Yeah.
Now you can see second half Sunday Night Football. It's genius. There's literally no bad part to this. That being said, let's move to the big kahuna, to use a Hawaiian word, on Saturday afternoon, 11 o'clock Central Time kickoff for some people in that viewing area, 12 o'clock noon for those of us in the Eastern time zone. Ohio State, Penn State, 3v7. This is going to determine a lot in terms of the Big Ten. If Ohio State wins this game, that puts even more importance on the game against Michigan in a few weeks, the last week of the season. If Penn State wins this game, things could really get shook up.
They can, and there's only 3 high quality teams in the Big Ten this year. We're talking about Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. They all play each other. They're all in the same division there, so it's kind of nice how that works out. They'll take care of it. They'll knock each other around, and we'll see who comes out with 2 wins, if anybody does. Yeah, I like it. This is the first installment of this little mini conference we got going on there. I think Ohio State's at home. I think they're probably going to win, but I don't know. Penn State hasn't really been tested. They played Iowa. Iowa's ranked this week, and they beat them 31-0. So they don't have an offense. Iowa doesn't. So that's easy enough. That's another subject. I don't want to.
I was getting ready to say,
anyway.
You as an AP voter, how do you put in a team that can't get more yardage than I can when I walk out to my car every morning?
I'm glad you asked, because I said this earlier in the week too. When I got to the end of my ballot, I got down to like 24, I got 20, 21. Kentucky was out, Kansas was out, Washington State was out for getting run over by Arizona last week. And I'm looking around, I'm like, damn, Iowa is 6-1. Like, I got to do this. I got to put them back in. And I hadn't put them on a ballot all season. I refused to vote for them. And I got down to them. Somebody's got to be in there. I got to 21, 22. Somebody's got to be in the last 3 slots. So I threw Iowa in there and Tulane. I mean, Iowa's 6-1. So they're beating people. I don't know how they're doing it, but I guess it's all defense. But I mean, they're going to run out of steam, and they're going to, if they win the West, it's going to be a bulldozer going to hit them in the Big Ten title game against either Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan. Right? There's a big gap.
One of the 3. It's Gus Johnson will not have to burn a whole lot of oxygen calling that game. I can tell you much.
That's right.
So let me get your thoughts on 2 teams that I think should be ranked, and I think probably by the end of this week they would. Liberty, undefeated. James Madison, undefeated. Is there anything more you need to see from those 2 programs for them to jump in?
Well, I mean, they don't have the quality of opponent is so low. And I know, JMU beat Virginia. I get that. But we all know what Virginia is.
Virginia barely counts as a Power 5 school this year. So
correct. And I did look at both of those teams when I was filling out the end of the ballot, and I went with Tulane instead of one of those 2. So it did come down to those 3, and Tulane's the one I picked. I just don't see it. I mean, they're good teams. I think they're going to win 8-9 games this year, at least 10. But I just don't. There was such a lack of quality there, of anything close to quality. You know what I'm saying? It was just so. And it's it's the conferences they play in and all that. I get it, but that was it. I didn't see the quality of opponent.
Last thing, USC. Obviously, they're flawed a little bit. Utah's got a chance to really knock them on their rear end this weekend. You think they can do it?
I do. Southern Cal's defense is really not good, and there were questions about that from the first game they played this year. San Jose State, I think who they opened up with, and they gave up over 20 points. I think it was 28, I think. But so I
That
knew
was a
then,
week 0 game.
yeah, something's not right here. They should have enough athletes that shouldn't be a problem against San Jose State. And they did. And we've seen, they had to go to triple overtime to beat Arizona and that stuff. I felt like this Notre Dame result was coming. It was just a matter of when. And when USC goes against Utah, Oregon, Washington, there's some good teams out in the Pac-12. They give a lot of points to Colorado, right? They won the game, but they give up a lot of points. So I just, in fact, I had them down to 13th on my ballot when they were still undefeated because I knew they were gonna take a tumble, and so I didn't have to drop them as much this week because I already had that built in.
Trojan Nostradamus, Steve Wiseman. One more thing before we let you go. All of you need to circle this date on your calendars. Tuesday night, October 24th, Western Kentucky and Liberty. Technically the two top teams in Conference USA because Jacksonville State can't play in the conference championship game. Mark it down. There's your Tuesday night television right there. That is going to be some marquee
if Liberty wins
viewing.
That'll be a quality win. They beat the Toppers. So I'll keep an eye on that. See?
It's on you, Jamie.
Point.
It's on you.
If they still are undefeated, then they'll have a chance of getting ranked but surely by then somebody will beat Iowa. Somebody will score 10 points and beat Iowa. So I got to knock them back
You
out.
even need to score 10? I think you could punt backwards and get a safety on yourself and probably still be able to win.
Yes.
Then that was a low blow. Anyways,
I'll still be looking for somebody to fill the bottom of the ballot. So at some point, Liberty or JMU may get the call because enough teams are going to lose.
Make your case, folks. Steve Wiseman's got the power in his hands. Steve, thanks so much.
Always glad to be with you.
We'll see you all next week. Enjoy the weekend.